Now we're on to the part that I would say is probably the most involved of this whole plugin. Um, I guess that's the bad news. The good news is once we get through it, um, number one, we're totally done with our setup portion or our setup function, and number two, we're really in the home stretch for having the plugin totally complete. Um, like I said before, I started with setup. Setup is the most involved in this plugin, um, and probably get the most out of it too. Um, Now let me just explain what we want to do in this part, and then in the next two parts, we'll go through and actually do it. Um, right now, we have it so that we can go into our setup dialog, select a channel, click OK, and get that selected channel into our setup dialog or into our output plugin. Right now, we have that. This integer selection is the actual selected index for the channel. What we want to do next is we want to save that value so that we can, when we run the plugin, we can get that value and use it and actually output that channel's value. Now, I made this plugin before I started the tutorials, and I called it example plugin. So let me use that and show you exactly what we're going to do. This is just the sequence from using the example plugin, which is exactly what we're building. And you'll notice in here before, when I showed this to you, we just had this line here. It said tutorial. The name of it was tutorial, but that's the only difference. What we're going to do now is after we select a value in our setup dialog, we click OK, we're going to write a custom node and save it under settings, and we'll call it channel index. And we'll have our value here. Now, just for learning purposes, I also included adding an attribute, which I just wrote the value of value, just so when we go through it, you can see how you can do it if you need to do it. Now, just as an explanation on how this works before we actually get into it. When you click OK, what we're going to actually do in the output plugin is look for this settings node in here, delete it, and then write a new one. Now, initially that's going to cause a problem, but by the time we get all the way through it, the problem will be gone, and I'll explain that when we get to it. Now, there's only two real things you need to know about terminology-wise with what's going on here. This 0 here is actually our selected index. When I save this value, I just had it on the default setting, default channel, so it saved index 0. Now, the actual term for that is that's called inner text, as far as the XML node is called. So when we basically want to go and get the value, we're going to look under settings and under channel index and get the inner text, convert it from text to an integer, and then we can use it. Now you can save also attributes. These attributes are just additional values. For example, just to look a little bit further, in here in channels, this is all stuff that is put out directly by Vixen, but you would see here is the inner text of this node, and these are all attributes of it. So basically, you could go through if you needed to. We're not going to need to, but you could go through and say, okay, I want to find the channel 1 intertext, and then I want to find its enabled attribute and its ID attribute, etc. So that's all I'm going to cover in this part. I hope that clears up a little bit on the XML node, or I'm sorry, the setup node, about what's going on with that. And when we actually do it I'll probably have to separate it into two parts, but when we actually do it, I think it'll make a lot of sense.